My name is Ken Utley, President of SIMS Incorporated. Today we're going to try to take you through a complete tour of the SIMS 2 software. We're going to use the demonstration diskette because it's identical to the system you have or will purchase. So without a lot of further ado, let's get right on to it. In order to help you understand the SIMS 2, I always like to start out any kind of a demonstration or explanation with the account database. You may only use 30 to 35% of the capabilities within the SIMS 2, as any customer does. But the important thing is you pick out the 30 to 35% that pertain to your business. It's not important to use the whole thing. No one ever does. Well, I guess it's time to get started. And I like to start out right out with page 1, the account vitals. In page 1, one of the first things I want to show you is the fact that throughout the SIMS 2 program, you can reprogram or change the language within the program. For example, if I strike the Alt F10 key, you'll notice that the program then goes into a self-edit mode. I can come down at that point and change account number to system number simply by making a few keystroke changes. I can go through and change any portion of any page throughout the program. Notice, now I'm on group site. I could modify that. This is very helpful in allowing you to make changes that pertain to your site, or if it were in a different language, this allows the program to be changed to other and multiple type languages. Now, anytime you want to write those changes back out, you simply again strike Alt F10, and those changes are written out to the overlay file of the SIMS 2. Now, continuing on, I'd like to bring your attention to another couple things that you can find throughout the whole program. Number one, the SIMS program is loaded with F2 pop-up windows throughout the complete program. In there, you may pick specific items and then hit the Enter key and put them into your database. This is used to speed database entry as well as make the complete database entry more accurate. I can move on to such things as class, group, and site ID. Let's start out with the explanation of the group ID. The group ID allows you, if you're doing third-party monitoring, to divide up the dealers within your system. So you may provide statistical reports for them in particular. It also gives access for them for only their accounts. The site ID is used to identify different central stations that may be under a synchronization method of the SIMS link. If we move on to the classes of the account, we can use this to choose certain classes like commercial, fire, residential, supervised, opening and closing, and so forth. Later on, we can create statistics and lists of accounts that pertain to certain categories. In the name, contact, address, and cross-street fields, there are 37 characters to allow you to completely describe the different type fields. If we move on down to the city, there are 25 characters allowed. State or province, 3 characters. There is a zip code of up to 10 characters. A fax number, as all phone numbers are, of up to 18 characters. There is a primary and a secondary phone number. There is a primary and secondary control number that identify the numbers that the panel is connected to in the case of a digital. This is very helpful when using caller ID built into your receiver, because the SIMS software will extract the caller ID information and then program it into the database. This is a very helpful feature in false alarm reduction. Notice there is a primary and secondary program number. This is the number or numbers that the panel is designed to call to the central station. There are 2 numbers in case of a 2-drop control panel. We can move down to subscriber options where we have a premise verify flag. This flag will allow that the premise, primary, and secondary numbers appear for all dispatches before any authorities are called. In the case of a excessive false alarms, false alarm ordinances, and so forth. This can be a very helpful flag that's programmed on an account-by-account basis. Premise Verify can also be set up on a zone-by-zone basis and a dealer-by-dealer basis. A yes flag will override any of the subsequent ones down the line. In other words, Prem Verify First on page 1 will override the flags and give you a Prem Verify First on all of the zones, no matter what. There is a verification form return, just a quick method for you to keep track of if you've sent out the verification forms for the customer to sign off and send back to you. There are threshold and interval fields. I also would like to bring to your attention at this time that throughout the program there are help instructions to be found simply by depressing the F1 key. Note, the F1 help key is like opening the manual to the right page and the right paragraph every time. Throughout the SIMS 2 program, the F1 key is the help key and may be utilized at anywhere. We can move on to the interval, the closed NOTs, the subscriber options. Subscriber option field here is for all those special types of opening and closing type accounts for identifying the user numbers. Notice an all OK word. This is a general all OK word that anyone in this particular establishment may use to help in canceling alarms. There's a place for a permit number, an account type, and notice again, there are programmable account types throughout the program that you choose what you want them to be. There are control types to identify what kind of a panel is located within this premise. This is going to be extremely important later on in the dispatching explanation because we can assist the operator in helping them understand how to change user numbers, how to reset the fire alarm, and so forth. There are fields for alarm and restoral rounds when dealing with McCulloughs. There is a backup account field for tying digital and radio together. In this particular case, if a radio account was in the same establishment with Tequila Willie's, we would identify that account number, and then when the operator deals with these type events on the traffic display, both of them will be tied together. As a further explanation, just to give you an example, if a radio and a digital signal are coming in together and the radio doesn't show up, we know it's a service problem. However, if the radio comes in and not the digital, we know this is a probable attack situation. These exception events are brought to the operator's attention on the traffic display. There's a space for a notify account, so when tying together chain stores that have the same contact list. Then there's the all-important zone account field for use in such formats as Contact ID, Modem 2, and SIA, when this panel may be capable of dealing with hundreds of different zones. This stops us from having to program all these zones in each and every account, and only requires that we put the zones in for this account that are different or specially identified. Open access for direct connect to the fire departments. There's the tests every field, with also the selection between minutes, hours, and days. Notice, if you're dealing in the hours, you can nominate a 1-week interval as 168 hours instead of using the 7 days. The resolution on these happens on the interval. In other words, if you program an account for a 24-hour test, the closest it can get to that is 24 hours 1 minute, and the farthest the interval will be 24 hours and 59 minutes. Again, remember the resolution is by interval. Choose hours whenever possible. The report language may be chosen, and whether this is an opening-closing report or not. Also the interval. These are very important when designing your system so that you pick out the opening-closing reports that are weekly, bi-monthly, and monthly. There is a space for the daylight savings time, so you may nominate whether this account is on daylight savings time. Time zone offsets. If you happen to be monitoring in the center part of the United States in Central Standard Time, you may enter the offset from the Eastern to Pacific to out to Hawaiian time. And for half-hour intervals in these offsets, for our special customers in Nova Scotia, there is a 30-minute switch. Also notice that there are 14 fields on page 1. These may be programmed in any way that you deem necessary. You can identify in the first block those accounts that are opening and closing if you want. The second, with specific types of panels possibly. The third, with specifics and special type information that may be only known by you. This concludes page 1, and let's move right on to page 2. Now let's start with the Account Maintenance Zone page. This is the heart of the whole situation. In here, the way we program the different zones has a tremendous bearing on how much the operator has to do. You will notice in the zone field, to begin with, there are up to 7 characters of information that may be entered into each zone. This lets you deal with specific type formats such as Contact ID, Modem 2, and SIA. I'd like you to get a good explanation of the overall parts of this page. Notice by using a Control X, we can actually move the sliding window up and down within the top of the screen. Control W moves it back up. The Control X may be used to actually go down and select the specific zones. Also take note that as we move our cursor down, the zone variables for the zone that we're on change. That's so that we may choose different capabilities for each one of the zones. Now let's go back up to the top to the fire, smoke detector, and kitchen. The restoral for that particular zone is 11. And if we look down at the account zone variables, we'll notice that there is a 60-minute timeout on this particular zone. This means if the alarm trips and it's not restored within 60 minutes, in addition to the operator dealing with the fire alarm itself, an unrestored signal will be created by the computer system to notify him that nothing has taken place about restoring that zone. As opposed to some systems that must require you to go back and take unrestored reports and then deal with it in a batch type system, the SIMS will allow each individual zone to be addressed for the timeout value, thereby spreading the total workload for the operator over a longer period of time. If we move down to Zone 2, which is a duress signal, you'll quickly notice that there is a restoral of 15 minutes. For the force safe opening, it's only 5 minutes, but we've added a few extras in this one. We know that this is a forced safe opening. This may be a 24-hour type signal that we're going to ignore at certain parts of the day or certain days of the week between certain hours. We know that the zone is a 3, the restoral is a 13, the cancel may be a 9. But if we get on down to the bottom part of the zone variables, we've also found out that we can nominate on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday between the hours of 9 and 1700 that the mnemonic will be changed from a BUR to an LOG, thereby allowing this signal to be processed directly through the system without any operator action. If we go down to Zone 4, we will have entered something new in there. We now have an entry-exit delay of 120 seconds on a front door entry. So if the panel didn't have any entry-exit delay, in the case of a direct wire, the system will now put that signal away for 120 seconds looking for an opening or a closing. If we move on down, we have a backdoor entry. Also notice it has an ANC delay or could have an entry-exit delay. Notice on these type signals or type zones, we've asked for a premise verify first. If I move on down to the rear door loading, again, I'm looking for the restoral within 10 minutes to make sure they close the door. We have lots of capabilities through here. Moving on down and using this unrestored capability, I'd like you to notice this. A code 21 is a low power trouble. The restoral for that, or a low power restoral, is a 22. I could nominate down here that I want within 15 minutes to be notified if the power goes off and does not come back on. Many cases, the fact of a zone going off is much less significant than the fact that it hasn't restored within a specified period of time, i.e., freezer alarms. Temperature sensors let you know when the temperature has gotten out of place, but by the time you get authorities there or the establishment there, who knows, the temperature may go to such a degree as to have allowed meat spoilage. But you know that if the power is off for 30 minutes, you know that something has to start taking place right then. Let's move on down through this and get on up to our next one, the low battery trouble. Down to the test system. And I want to come back now to the opening signals, a B1. This particular opening signal is a type R signal, whereas all of the other openings coming through the system go to the default, a type O, which could be classified, or would be classified later on, as we'll see, as a UL or ULC type opening. B1 could be used for the cleaners. In this case, they can open up out of schedule and it'll be auto-logged through the system, but 30 minutes later, if they've not closed the system, then we'll get a late to close. We've now created a window for them. Variable windows are also available by utilizing the F1 help down in the opening type window. This concludes page 2. Let's move on to the contacts. Now let's look at page 3 of the SIMS 2 database, the account maintenance call list. You'll notice first of all that there's a field for a pass card for each and every person on the call list. There's a 21 character name field where we can actually expand out on their name. There's an access level field to identify what capabilities this particular person on the call list has. There was a user identifier field for his user openings and closings, so we can get his name or her name on the opening closing detail report. There again is the 18 character phone number field. 5 different mnemonic fields to help us identify which people get brought to the screen for which type events. Also, on the options for each and every one of these fields, there's a comment field of 10 characters. We can nominate certain days of the week for this particular client to be called on, and between certain hours, between certain dates, and whether at the end of this time we want their name purged from the list. Notice, William Fenton has 2 entries on the call list, Monday through Friday or for his home phone, but we're only to call him from the hours of 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. Therefore, his name will never appear on the traffic display for operator dispatch or contact after 1 o'clock in the morning and before 6 o'clock in the morning. He's the owner. He's identified to you. He doesn't want to be disturbed. On his second entry on the call list is for his beach home on Saturdays and Sundays. He will be reached there at any time. Paul Levine might be the management level person, as well as Tom Johnson, Evan Horvath. We can even utilize these special capabilities within the contact list for a person like Shelley Jensen, who might be a house sitter over the summer months. In this particular case, she'll be a contact for the dispatch center from July 1st to September 1st, as indicated below on her variables. But also notice the purge flag is set to a yes. So, when her time passes on September 1st, she will automatically be removed from the system. Therefore, this is the way we take you closer to the paperless type system. Now let's move on to the account maintenance schedules page. Page 4 of the SIMS 2 database deals with the account maintenance schedules. First, let's look at that. We may nominate different days of the week of the schedules simply by using different groups or character identifiers that we can identify by bringing up the help screen. Notice, if we want to have a schedule that deals with Monday through Friday, it's M-F. Or we can nominate one day of the week at the time, as in the first couple of examples on this particular schedules page. Just remember, computers are stupid. They believe that 1 a.m. on Monday is 1 a.m. on Monday. They're not referring to 1 a.m. on Tuesday when the schedule actually completes. So in our example here, we show the account is opening up at 11 a.m. on Monday, but it is also has closed at 1 a.m. from the previous Sunday schedule. So 1 a.m. on Monday would be the Sunday closing. 11 a.m. opening on Monday is the start of the Monday schedule. There are three types of openings that we can nominate for. We have the O type, the R type, and the S type. The O type is the UL or ULC type opening, where only one opening is allowed during any one day. If you have questions about those types of openings, always remember you can simply strike the F1 key for the help and get a complete identifier. There are other numeric values that you can enter into here to nominate a schedule for certain periods of time. They are particularly helpful in utilizing zone openings for cleaners that might be in for 30 minutes, an hour, 2.5 hours, 5 hours, etc. We can then also identify whether we want every opening to be an exception. Some subscribers require that they be notified every time an account opens up. There is the late to close field and the late to open field. In this particular case, this schedule is nominating a late to open if it does not open by 11 o'clock on Monday, with the late opening tolerance of 30 minutes in this case. So therefore, a late to open will come to the operator's attention at 11:30 Monday morning. We can nominate whether we want this particular account to be able to close early. In the case of some chain stores, when we do not want them to close early, or the home office wants to be notified in the case of a close early, we can answer yes to allow it or no to disallow that closing earlier. If their schedule calls for them to be open at 1 a.m., they should be open up until 1 a.m. We can also nominate whether we want the operator's attention brought for any type closing, and the same for the late to close. In this case, this client must be closed by 1 a.m. plus the late closing tolerance of 60 minutes on a Monday. So at 0200, if this account is still open, it will come to the operator's attention as a late to close. In this particular case, we have a Tuesday schedule, a Wednesday through Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. Remember this, if you only have schedules on Mondays through Fridays and Saturdays and Sunday the account should be closed, you must enter the tolerances over on the right-hand side of the screen. These tolerances can vary from 0 to 99 minutes. There are also global codings that we can bring to your attention. At a later time, we'll discuss the globals and the way they can be utilized to assist you for holiday schedules, summer schedules for schools, and etc. There are also up to 7 temporary schedules that may be entered in. We'll look at those temporary schedule entries during the dispatch part of the tapes. This concludes page 4 of the database, the account maintenance schedules. Page 5 of the SIMS 2 database is the account maintenance miscellaneous. Here we have the brief and temporary comments, 11 lines of 58 characters of the permanent comments, and some optional data update info. Notice first of all in the brief and temporary comments there is the ability to put a beginning and ending date. If we utilize this beginning and ending date, we can place comments that will be removed after the until date is passed. This can be very helpful when putting in paperless type comments for people that are going on vacation, house sitters, or other type events that are necessary to know in the dispatching parameters of this account. On the permanent comments part of the page, we have the 11 lines of 58 characters for miscellaneous type information. This can be utilized for medical information about the account or just general information about the account. As we move down through that and over to the data update info, notice first of all that the date the account is entered is kept, the last service date, the latest event, so we know the last time a signal came in by the account, the activity began date, which incidentally I should mention is very important on the Alt F6 history during dispatching of the event. The contract renewal date, you can put the date in the next contract is due to be renewed. This can be very helpful when making selective lists of those accounts that you want to know when special things are required. Verification returned on. In the case of false alarm reduction, it may have been necessary for a client to lose his dispatching abilities. You may put in the date that he will be reinstated on, beginning when the false alarm check started. For American two-way, there are two fields. Map grids to help the local police department locate where the account is, and keypad numbers if necessary. This concludes page 5 of the database. Now let's move on to page 6. Page 6 of the SIMS 2 database deals with the account equipment list. In here we have a moving window of unlimited equipment. Notice on the field number 1, it's a quantity field. Then we have a part number field, a description field, a location field, the installed date, the part warranty expiration date, the labor expiration date, the original installer, the zone this particular equipment is connected to, routing codes, and sorting codes so that we may break apart our whole database into different types of equipment. This concludes page 6 of the account SIMS 2 database. Page 7 of the SIMS 2 database is a miscellaneous page dealing with account mailing, service, and charges. In this page, we find the actual mailing address the reports will be sent to. This could be different than the page 1 vitals address in the case of chain stores, where all reports are sent to a central location. You'll notice that if you move through here without putting any information in, the SIMS 2 will automatically fill the information in for you from page 1. If you want to put your own information as a change of address and so forth, then you simply type it in. As we move on down there, we'll also know we have a fax and upload phone number, both primary and secondary. There is position for an email address so that we can send the reports out by email if desired. Down in the second group of information is our scheduled service. In this particular case, we've started scheduled service on the 1st of January in 1990. And every 180 days, we can ask the system to automatically generate another service call for this account. We've also identified such things as the service area so that we may group accounts to a particular service area. If we move on through this, we're going to be up to the account originated by, in the case it was purchased from a dealer. Who owns the account? The permit expiration, guaranteed to date, and other fee type areas that may be utilized either by the third-party monitoring central station or the dealer. This concludes page 7 of the account maintenance database. last page of the database deals with accounting information. Now, while utilizing this page, please remember that it's designed not only for working with the SIMS integrated accounting, but also as a standalone database accounting information page. We have mail invoices to dealer or the subscriber, account on credit hold, and please take note there are several different levels of account on hold. Division, late charges, location, salesman originating, country, taxable yes or no, tax codes, his credit limit, the accounting number in your accounting system, sale and install date, warranty expiration dates in general, start billing date, end billing date, and whether you want to group this with other accounts for an assigned invoice to, invoice included in, billing codes. Notice later on when we get to reports, we'll be able to sort on the billing code 1 and 2. Terms on this account. There are 4 reserved fields, whether it's local or watts for long distance calling. You can keep information about how they want their billing collected, whether it's bank card, credit card. Do they want a statement? What branch? An account number and credit card, along with 2 more optional reserve fields. You will notice the balance, credits, most recent activity field that are in the light gray type coloring. These must be fed by an external accounting package. It could be the SIMS general accounting package or another. Information about where to provide these and place these in your SIMS 2 database is available in your manuals. Down at the bottom, we have reoccurring type charges. These are unlimited and can be added on an individual basis. This concludes the accounting information, or the last page of the subscriber information. We at SIMS, and particularly myself, appreciate the time you have taken in this presentation of the SIMS 2 client database. We have attempted to introduce you to some of the capabilities of SIMS 2, and while it would be impossible to cover every capability, we believe you are now well on your way to a more comprehensive understanding. This video is the first in a series of informational videos being produced by SIMS to assist in your understanding of the SIMS 2. We sincerely hope this time has been of benefit to you and your staff. Until next time, this is Ken Utley, President of SIMS, saying thanks for the time we've spent together.